codes of every aspect.
Maybe this resolution could go to the FCM.
That would probably be a very good point. That would probably be a very good point. We could send Councilor Crocker down. Very good point.
Then maybe Councillor Hamlet would want to, or Councillor Thompson would want to craft a resolution to that effect. I certainly would be willing to help you with that.
You should definitely embark on that, because that's, just keep it just at one level of government, which is the provincial level. I don't think that'll be sustainable enough, because should they within themselves decide we're not going to go that route, for let's say persuasion, if you want to call it, from the federal level, or even the aspect of questioning, well, why wouldn't you want to be like the rest of the country, would be a very, very initiative approach.
But thinking this through, wouldn't we have to be have it approved at UBCM level before it goes to federal?
Yeah.
You take a KBLG
And then UBCM, and then from UBCM, it would go to federal.
There's many ways of approaching this, but as we did with the Greyhound issue, I mean, just to send a letter, there's no harm, right? And if we can get other municipalities in the province to rally along with us and have more constructive force behind us, sure, there's elements where you can go to AKBLG to UBCM, but sometimes it needs to be directed right at the head instead of just the rest of the body. And that's it.
Particularly with those municipalities that have their own policing. Nelson, Benson,
Anyone over 5,000.
yeah. Well, yeah, but they don't have their own police force. That it's over 5,000. It's still RCMP.
Yeah, exactly. Councillor Thompson is referring to the actual municipal police force, like the city of Vancouver. And you see this element that's to a degree also being held over our head, which was explained to us that even if we acquire 5,000 and we pay for our policing, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get better policing. It has no element whatsoever there, because there's still going to be, as I put it to when I spoke to the higher up officials at the RCMP, they're basically handcuffed with their own handcuffs because they can't do anything. They can arrest, but they can't lay charges. So what kind of, element of how zealous and do they want to be if they know it's to no end?
Yeah, Mayor Conrad, I did speak with Sergeant Fensky about this. We did communicate about this, and I had suggested that was possibly one area that he would like us to tackle, because when I spoke with him, I said, think about what we could bring forward that would be the most helpful to you in your policing capacity. And he basically said that to remove that, that charging, their lack of ability to charge, he said that's not going to happen. And he didn't hold out really any hope for that resolution. That doesn't mean we still couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. I do see it as it is an additional issue to these three resolutions. It's yet another level. And I absolutely believe, with as all of you do, that this is really hamstringing them. And were we to get on the same page with the rest of the provinces, BC might see a really substantial decrease in serious major crime here. I mean, I'm talking like, major gang activity. Gang violence and all the drugs that come into the port and all of that. But he didn't seem to think that was something that we were going to be able to tackle from our level. But you know what? We could give it a try. Why not?
As for Darren Olkey out of Nelson, which is Jim Fensky's boss, and after speaking also to the superintendent for the Kootenay boundary area, which came out of Kelowna, having discussions with them in my office, again, they didn't ascertain any promises, but they did say any level of support is always well-founded. And if we just let it go, then nothing will happen. But there's always that worthwhile attempt that we have to try something.
Yeah, I think Nelson brought forward about 4 resolutions last year. So if somebody wanted to draft up a resolution regarding that, I'd fully support it.
Yeah, because I think it's pretty relevant that we should send some letters or something to the Attorney General and
appointments every day this week, so wouldn't be able to do anything for the next meeting on the 29th.
We probably need something. I don't think really the background information would vary substantially from what I've already done.
No.
So if you want me to throw a fourth one, up against the wall for next time, I can do that.
It could be pretty much a cut
Yeah,
and paste
for sure.
scenario, but directing it more at the federal level. The Attorney General and whoever.
Well, we do it through the AKBLG to encourage the,
Provincial and federal governments.
yeah, because, I mean, it's the province and the feds that got together and made this cockamamie deal where the police can't make charges, and I don't know the background of the whys and the wherefores on that one. But, we need to get the Attorney General or the Solicitor General or whoever is the appropriate minister to try and meet with his counterpart federally and get this resolved.
Possibly even approach Richard Kansas on that one too.
Yeah.
Get him involved. It's just like our MLA Linda Larson, get them all involved. The more the merrier. Councillor Ross.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad, I'm sorry,
It's
it's okay.
Rather than a fourth resolution, is it appropriate just to add a further therefore be it resolved? And potentially.
On one of these?
On one of these? Like on number 2? Or actually, we want a complete change in maybe number 3. Like, is there any way we can reword it? Because I just think the chances of getting 4 resolutions submitted is going to be like, okay, which one? They're going to say, well, that's too many, and we're going to cut one out. And which one do we want to sacrifice? So rather than risking having one of our resolutions sacrificed because we're being a little piggy, let's add therefore be it. Is there any way we can reword one of these where that second therefore be it resolved is appropriate?
Well, these ones, if I may, Mayor Conrad, these resolutions are actually the resolutions that Sergeant Fensky thought had the greatest chance of getting passed.
Right.
So I don't know that I would want to maybe, because each one is definitely a different.
It is, yeah.
It's a different thing that's
Yeah.
being asked for. Unless, there was, like you say, just a decision to drop, but I mean, I think it's pretty important to ask for additional Crown lawyers. And definitely the police would like to see that level, that standard dropped to a reasonable level. But that's really onerous to try and make them live up to that for every single case.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, let's start with this, because we're gonna start somewhere. Right?
But if Councillor Tripp would bring forward another resolution, we have nothing to lose and everything to gain by forwarding it on to the AKBLG.
So let's.
And, you may get support from places like Nelson that have their own police department. They may be.
What's a good idea is to send them ahead of time to other jurisdictions to get them to endorse it.
Just like we get letters from other
Yeah,
municipalities too, that
just
they're
like-
presenting at either UBCM, the AKBLG, or even in form level of other.
Like, I heard about this in Costin and Carryover and throughout the Princeton and small communities around here where they're complaining about exactly the same issues.
Terramills, especially Manfred Bauer, was on the news, I think it was about close to a year ago now. Same thing where they're lacking policing needs. So I mean, it's not something that we're unique in here.
New Denver, Spokane.
Okay,
All right.
Councilor Butler.
So we have a motion on the table right now to receive reports. So if we receive these reports, can we then put forward a motion to adopt these resolutions to forward on to the AKBLG and also to other municipalities to endorse? And then if Councillor Tripp or somebody else wants to bring forward that other motion, we still have until February, 22nd of February to get that together. We can do that by email and then bring it forward at another meeting.
We could also put a letter of request right to the federal government.
And that too.
No harm. We did it with Greyhound, like I said, and we got a response.
Before we sign off on the council's reports. As a liaison for the Downtown Business Association, we had our meeting on Wednesday night, so it was after the deadline to get a report in. But there was a request from them to remind, ask the council, the mayor, to set a date for the roundtable discussion. They're still waiting to hear from.
I was under the anticipation that we were going to send them action items of what we were doing, and it was gonna be done through correspondence, was my interpretation of the last time this came up for discussion. That a roundtable meeting was not necessarily gonna be
They haven't
occurring.
received nothing from us, so.
Well, I believe Kevin did throw up he's seen it.
Your Worship, we had done a list of updates, I think, on the 11th, and
Right.
Because Councillor Hammett was put in as a liaison,
But they-
she was going to.
Yeah, and we did have some discussion about that at the meeting, but they said that they'd still like to have a face-to-face with council.
Okay, well, I
So,
thought their requests
They
were,
just, they want them to sit down and they think it's healthy to have these quarterly with council, have roundtables, and they want to have that close connection, and I think council should have a close connection with the business community as well, so.
well, yeah, we can do
So they
one-on-one.
they still want to, they appreciate, that you've appointed me as official liaison now, but they still would like to have the face-to-face roundtables
I'm glad you got that request, so,
to brainstorm and.
okay, well, we'll set it up for sure then. In that case, if that's their intent,
Mhm.
their wish, and of course, yes. Council Tripp,
So I believe, was Councillor Butler able to put that motion forward, or are we voting on the
We still have to
report?
vote.
we have to,
Okay.
we're voting on the
Yeah.
receipt, so all in favor? Anyone opposed, so carried.
So I'll put forward a motion that council adopt the 3 resolutions in Councillor Tripp's report to forward to the AKBLG and to other communities just within the AKBLG or province-wide? Other communities province-wide to endorse?
To gain support
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say endorsing.
and endorse.
If I could just add as amended, because we do need to change
Okay.
the ADAG to the province,
Okay,
just those 2 words.
As amended.
But we don't, oh,
Yeah.
That's okay.
And what about our letter? We want to draft a letter, mayor regarding federal government.
And further, that staff draft a letter to the federal government regarding the ability of the RCMP in British Columbia to be able to directly lay charges through the courts.
Yeah, fall in line with the rest of the country, so to speak, and encompass the laws.
Yeah, and that'll come back to council, I imagine, for approval before we send it on.
With the resolution.
Second, please. That's proper. Unless there's any other discussion. All those in favor? So carried. Okay, moving on to the verbal report from the RDKB rep, which would be myself. Recommendation is that Mayor Conrad report on the activities of the regional district would be boundary given verbally at this meeting be received. Mover, please. Councillor Thompson, seconder, Councillor Butler. Okay, basically, there's not much at the first meeting because we had our RDKB director present at our committee of the whole meeting this morning. I mean, there was a couple of discussionary issues that he discussed. For instance, they're looking at now implementing asset management, which was brought up as one of their action items. BC Transit was discussed at the BCBC also, but that was discussed this morning. As far as the board meeting was concerned, not much pertaining to Grand Forks, other than the fact that it was brought to the table about the OCP changes that Grand Forks had put forward in the bylaw, and it was recognized and basically accepted. And that would be about it. The rest was pertaining most to the other regions and Grand Forks. So that's it. So all in favor of receipt? Anyone opposed? So carried. All right, moving on to item 8A, which is the recommendation from staff for decision. Policy 801, revised bank signing authority from our chief financial officer. The recommendations to council
Yes, when we introduced this bylaw at the committee of the whole, we presented three options for the water rates, and one of those options was it was actually calculated at 53 cents. That was the third option, and the other two were the 25 cents, which we have here. And council at that time decided to go ahead with the second option, which was at 20, which was to transition us between what the current rate is, which is approximately 17 cents a cubic meter. So council requested that we bring forward a transitional rate of 25 cents rather than going forward to the 53 cents.
Okay, so option 2 was a flat rate and then in excess of, it was going to be charged per cubic meter.
No, I think I think there's maybe a little bit of confusion between the three options that Urban Systems presented in their rates analysis.
Yeah.
And the three options that staff presented at the committee of the whole. So this is following Urban Systems' second option, which was what was decided from their presentation. But then of the three options, that we presented at the committee of the whole, we also decided to go with the second option there too, which was the transitional rate for the metered water users.
So also just to clarify that with urban systems, that was for the residential water rates, and this is for the non-residential.
That's good.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad. Yeah, I just, I hate to belabor this point, but to me, between 2016 and 2018 is really just 2 years. And I just don't, I know it maybe seems like nickel and diming, but knowing that tax rates go up and other fees and services and charges go up, I just would not be comfortable signing on to this unless this was reduced to a 6%. I mean, I could see justifying a 6% increase, but a 10%, essentially a 10% increase on the single family rate there from 70, whatever it was, 78, 30 to 85. I'm just not comfortable with that.
Or Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to mention that to a certain extent that increase for the residential represents a little bit of a rebalancing, because if you took the equivalent commercial or metered customer and looked at their usage at the 48 cents per cubic meter, which is based on a third of the water usage. If you took that equivalent and you took the residential equivalent, the difference in the flat, because the residential's flat, the difference between the two equates to the 10 is actually $10 difference. But I've calculated it out to be that it actually should be $10.78 higher. So it's not just a across the board 10% increase. There's a little bit of a rebalancing between what the residential user will be paying for and what the non-residential user will be paying for.
So I think I understand what you're saying is that it's a 3% increase on the gross revenue for the sewer service. It just happens to be more than 3% for the residential, but less than that for the commercial. Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Mayor. Well, it's combined. It's three. It would be 6% because it's 2 years of 3%. So yes. And the other thing too is this calculations were done from that basis, but we don't know if water usage might actually be lower, and in which case we wouldn't meet that revenue requirement. So there's a little bit of a risk there, if in the same with the water as well, that if people cut back on their usage, then we wouldn't be generating revenue that we do require. There's a lot of
Any other discussion? Hearing none? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Councilor Tripp, Councilor Lefebvre opposed. All right, carried. Moving forward to 11C. Bylaw 1974-82 to amend the sewer regulations bylaw number 1974, 2014, again from our Chief Financial Officer. The recommendation is council gives first two readings to the sewer regulations amendment bylaw number 1974-82, 2018, and direct staff to present the bylaw for final reading at the January 29, 2018 regular meeting. Mover, please. Councilor Thompson, second. Councilor Crog, discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. 11D, bylaw 1975A3 to amend the water regulations bylaw number 1973A1 from our Chief Financial Officer. And the recommendation of the council gives first three readings to the water regulations amendment bylaw number 1973A3 2018 and direct staff to present the bylaw for final reading at the January 29th, 2018 regular meeting. Mover, please. Councilor Thompson. Second. Councilor Brown. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried. All right, moving on to our late items, which would be 12A, which is the notice of motion from Councillor Ross as presented this morning at the Committee of the Whole meeting. And guess what we would need here is the actual notice of motion. Can I get the notice of motion put on there? The reporter can have it on the table, on the board, I'm sorry.
It's on the agenda, right, the very top, you see 2W.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
All right. So I would not be wrong in assuming that we will be reading the second part of that, which is the resolution in itself. Correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Ross, but the recommendation is therefore be it resolved that council will eliminate committee of the whole, extend the time in which Beths and Whispers of Hope remain in their locations until May 1st, 2018. Would that be in accordance and acceptable as a?
It is, but I realize that there's a error in there. Therefore be resolved that, that council extends the time.
Yeah, I eliminated the committee of the whole portion because,
Yeah, no, I don't know why I was.
well, that was for this morning, but anyway, we don't make decisions in committee of the whole, so it should not have been there on purpose. So, again, I don't know how much we want to labor on this one, but I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Tripp.
I'd like to speak to my resolution.
Go ahead, Councilor Ross. Turn on.
Thanks very much. I mean, we've had lots of discussion about this already, and, but I've just had to write some thoughts down because, I need to be really clear about, what's behind this resolution. And I just want to wish everybody a happy new year. It's significant that at this very first regular meeting in 2018 that we are discussing this resolution.
focusing on ensuring the delivery of services that provides essential human needs to the most fragile in our community, and that those services can continue throughout this winter. In less than a month, in the middle of one of the harshest winters we've had in years, Whispers of Hope and Vets are supposed to close their doors and stop serving those that for various reasons need their assistance. I know that every day, especially in the winter, Whispers serves warm and nutritious meals to young families with children, seniors, and those who find it difficult to provide for themselves. I know that every night the beds of vets are full. I have a great deal of compassion for citizens in our cities who have experienced trauma due to crime. Theft, break-and-enters, vandalism, reckless littering of needles, condoms, and other materials is not what we want to experience here. I came home not long ago to find a strange man on my front porch. When I pulled into my driveway, he jumped over the front veranda railing, he ran across my lawn, climbed over the front fence, and took off down the road. I may have interrupted him trying to enter my home. I have several entrances to my home, and I expect that I did. I felt violated, and I felt unsafe for several months. I've had my car vandalized and I was stolen. But at no time have I felt that putting people out on the streets in the middle of winter was going to make my life safer or more comfortable. Rather, I sense that taking away the most basic essentials from people who are already desperate and suffering creates more frustration and indeed anger. Anger and frustration tends to create more negative behaviors. From what I've been told by people much more informed about who are using the services of Whispers and Vets, the vast majority of the people using those services are actually locals. People like most of us here today, we call Grand Parks home. These people have connections here, family and friends. And regardless of where people are from, dehumanizing people by questioning their roots or their latest address is simply unconscionable. People are in need in this place at this moment, at this time, and we have the resources to continue to serve them until the worst of winter is past. Any upgrades to the buildings can be done. Once again, we have the resources, and both Vets and Whispers have clearly articulated their desire to comply. This was made exceedingly clear in this morning's meeting. The long-range weather forecast for this winter is more of the same: more heavy snow, sub-zero temperatures, icy rain, bitter wind, and spring thaws with some localized flooding. With these conditions, I know that a hot meal and a warm bed is something that I, for one, do not take for granted, and would never deny any human being, let alone someone's pet, these simple luxuries. Recently, we celebrated the improvement and expansion of our dog park. So I'll throw that in there. I would like to also address the non-existent option of putting homeless clients in hotel rooms. This is not a favorite option, and please tell me what hotel or motel will rent rooms to these special guests who frequent shelters, where they can be closely monitored by trained staff without separate entrances to the street. And we all know, we've learned from BC Housing, this is not a favorite option. In this new year of 2018, at our first meeting, let's do the very best we can be by allowing Whispers of Hope and Vets to continue in their capacity to serve our fellow citizens until May 1st. April is often a really hard month here, and encourage these essential service providers along their journey to find new locations from which to operate. The lease will still end. Operational issues always have a social impact. A case in point is water meters. In closing, as of today, we have learned that Steve McGibbon has indeed hired a licensed electrician from Boundary Electric to address the concerns that we spoke about this morning, and that will be done tomorrow. Over 300 people have signed a petition to allow both institutions to remain open and support my resolution. We've had numerous letters of support, and this morning many people spoke in favor of my resolution. We also heard from Rolly Russell. He sat here today. Politely, he did not speak, but he went home and he contacted us simply as a taxpayer, and he's a person with young children in support of this resolution. And I would just appeal to council to understand operational decisions do have social impacts. I'm not emotional about this, but the people who will be put out in the streets and refuse meals will get emotional. Thank you.
Councilor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad, and I really appreciate Councilor Ross's heartfelt report there. I just absolutely agree too that, good governance cannot preclude the value of of our decisions on community and the social impact that it has. Good governance must include compassion. And, you know, I know that we were told this morning by Andre the story about the woman who had frostbite and was in need of those services there. I just hope that human stories like that don't just go right over our heads. We are the people that are making decisions that impact people's lives. I just don't think you can put value on that. And I do believe this is, in a way, it's risk assessment. We talked about the deficiencies being rectified. And I also would appeal to the rest of council to think, at least give them the 10 weeks on compassionate grounds. If we are certain that Whispers and Vets will move on after the 10 weeks, that they would make that commitment to take this 10 weeks and just, you know, get out there and do everything you can to get your ducks in a row so that you can leave there. I just really think that we could see it in our hearts to give them that time.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. These two organizations will have had 6 months to make a decision to relocate. This morning I offered a suggestion on dealing with the meals. I understand that from what was said both by Mr. McGibbon and our CAO, that there's been discussions with BC Housing with respect to the closure of the Devs facility. I don't think giving them any additional time is going to resolve the issue. And no one likes to see anybody put out on the street. Perhaps some of the churches could open their doors on a temporary basis to allow the homeless and those who need accommodation overnight, a place to lay their heads down. I don't think it's up to the city to find them, either organization, a new location. I have had, and we have had, I'm sure all of us, people both in support of both organizations and to encourage us to keep them open. We have also received correspondence from other concerned taxpayers who are saying, council, stick to your guns. And so it doesn't matter what decision we make. We are not going to please a section or a faction of our community. That they're coming at the 11th hour with an ask. I've read all kinds of uncomplimentary comments on Facebook with respect to this issue, which, you know, you just read it and you consider the source, I guess, or at least that's what I do. But as I said this morning, as we became aware of the issues, the electrical issues at the Whispers of Hope facility. And we were also made aware of an issue with their venting system, which I now understand they have resolved. But hiring a company, and I'm not sure that they can do that without permits and inspections, to come in and do a temporary remedy of a hazardous issue doesn't satisfy me. And I'm not prepared to put our taxpayers at risk. I said as much this morning, and I say it again tonight. So I will not be voting in support of this resolution.
Let me just weigh in on this. My position has not changed. I still believe that this is an operational issue. I know it seems to go in the direction and down the path of a social issue. But there's one, Councillor Ross,
How about a social impact?
you're out of order. You do not have the chair and you do not have to speak right now, please. What I have to say is it seems very ironic that we were here this morning and we're here again this evening. And the way this is being presented with a sense of gloom and doom, it's like you're leaving tomorrow. This is not the case. If I look at my calendar, we're talking about 10 extra weeks. We are now still talking about 3.5 weeks till the actual termination of the lease takes effect, which is February the 8th. Unless I'm wrong, somebody please correct me. We're talking 3.5 weeks that there's still an opportunity to find somewhere, which will encompass the total 6 months which was given. So I don't believe that this is a crisis situation at this point. We're not having everybody leave, and the term keeps being used, evicted. It's a termination of lease. Nobody's being thrown out. This was something that was stated in a resolution of council back in August, that we were giving notice for termination of lease in 6 months, which still remains 3.5 weeks, almost a month. So there's still the opportunity for this organization to find a solution to the problem. But until such time, I would please respectfully ask everyone to stop just looking at this as a social issue. Definitely it is a social issue too, but more so now it has become a major operational issue. Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think it's really unfortunate that Whispers is taking the brunt of the issues that are happening in our town surrounding drug abuse and crime, when, in my opinion, it's the drug dealers that need to be held responsible for these people's addiction. And the other day I came home and I know that someone on my street was arrested for dealing hard drugs. And yeah, they drove by, they're out again. Oh, I'm so mad. You know, it's not Whispers that I'm mad at. It's these people that are creating this drug problem in our community and people that continue to be friends with these people. These people are dealing to our friends and our kids. They should be ostracized from this community. It's not Whispers that should be evicted. It's these people that are feeding this problem, and it makes me sick. And it's our court system that is failing our RCMP so that they can't put these people behind bars where they might get some help. At least they'd have a roof over their heads. It's our mental health and our IHA system that's failing these people, that isn't getting them the treatment that they need. And the government sort of closed the facilities for people with mental health problems that aren't able to have a proper shelter and treatment for them. These systems are failing the people in our community and failing the RCMP. And it's not Whisper's fault. It's not what they're doing. These people have good hearts and they really want to help. And I'm really sorry to have to vote against this, because a lot of these people I considered my friends, and it's really hard to vote against this. It really is. But based on the in-camera report that we had at the first meeting, which unfortunately I can't release and I can't talk about, I wish I could. But based on what came in that report, based on letters that I've had from people in the know that I also can't talk about to protect their privacy and their safety, which it makes it really hard for me to explain my position to you. It breaks my heart to hurt you guys, because I know that you want what's best. I know that you're coming from a good place. But I'm really sorry, but the people in this community that have been put at risk are pulling on my heartstrings. People that have been broken into, the old ladies that have been broken into at nighttime, people that have come home from holidays and had their homes broken into and ransacked. I mean, I've had it happen to me a couple of times too. Everyone I know has had a crime committed against them, basically stemming from people feeding their drug addictions and people with mental health issues. But I can't support. I just can't support this resolution. I'm sorry.
Councillor Ross.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Recently, we went to DCM, and I know Councillor Tripp and Councillor Butler went to see a film that features Gabor Mate, and it was called Us and Them. And I know when I read the reports, they were both had some fairly glowing and interesting insights into that film. But one of the things that was made clear in that film was
that taking away services doesn't solve the problem. And I'm not sure how, and it was made very clear to us, and I'm not sure everybody wants to hear what was said this morning. Whispers of Hope and Bess have been working actively to find solutions. And the wheels have turned very slowly. Easy housing is very difficult to deal with at times. They have been actively looking for alternative venues from which to operate, moving a commercial kitchen that can also facilitate counseling and mentoring and help people who are everything from seniors to moms and kids to people with mental health and addictions. That's a tricky situation. And then to say, oh, we'll download it onto the church, to the public, to people who worship, that's not fair either. And because the soup kitchen has seen an increase in its clientele, that's putting extra pressure on the churches. And they haven't asked for that. And I don't think that's fair either, just to let the churches take care of it. Well, they'll decide what they have the capacity to care for. And so I still think that, yeah, it's a problem that we have drug dealers on the streets and we're seeing that, but I don't think shutting down Whispers of Hope and Bess in the middle of the winter is going to solve any of those problems. It's going to make people more angry and they are going to lash out. We've seen that happen before in our city when things have happened, when we made decisions at the city council, not this council, but other councils, and how that worked. And I just think what we do is we keep changing the rules. We made a list of what they needed to comply with. They comply, and then we move the goalpost. And now they're scrambling to comply again, and they didn't find out about what they weren't complying again about until they read it on social media. Our problem too, is as the landlord, we didn't communicate adequately with the tenants. And I know as a landlord, it's my responsibility to make sure that my buildings are up to code. So, I think just giving them more time while they continue on their journey, they might move out before May 1st. But putting them out on February 8th, and the reason I brought this forward now and not January 29th is because they need that more time to know that, okay, we have a bit more time to continue to actively seek alternatives for our services. But February 8th, if it doesn't happen by February 8th, then I'm afraid that this is not going to bode well for the city of Grand Forks. That here we are, the first meeting of 2018, and we decide that we are going to put the most fragile of our society out on the streets because they're not complying. And I'm sorry that we keep changing the rules.
Councilor Butler, second.
Yeah, speaking to the building's condition, and unfortunately Whispers can't speak right now because we're in a regular meeting, but I was phoned this afternoon and told that there's water pouring down the insides of the walls in the bathroom and the office, that roof is just shot. And it's just one thing after another with that building. There's no fixing it. It's done.
Well, they'll be.
I know that they're wanting to upgrade the things that we've told them, but that building it's been toast for a long time, and there is no upgrading it. I mean, the report we got was 300,000 in repairs, and those need to be done. We can't have buckets in the facility catching water leaking in off the roof. It's just not acceptable.
And if anything could happen, the corporation would be liable because we are aware now again, when they state that so many times emphatically, we are responsible for that building and the tenants and the people that are in that building. And that's the only element and approach that I take on this subject. Councilor Howard.
Yeah, this is a really tough decision for me. As I'm sure it is for all of council. And I know it's such an emotional topic that whenever it's discussed here in the gallery or at any of the public meetings, all the supporters are the ones that are the most vocal, and they're the ones that show up and talk about the situation. What we don't hear from, and who we don't hear from, are the people that we hear from in the background. They're not sitting here in the gallery complaining like they do to us in their letters and begging us not to allow this to continue. We do have a whole community to serve and protect, and I just want everybody to know that there are two sides to every story, and we are looking at trying to we're not going to keep anybody happy. Like it's always going to be somebody that's not going to be happy. But we do have other people, other than the voices that we hear here on a regular basis, that do communicate with us, that are the rest of the community that have a voice in this. Having said that, I don't want to see people sleeping in the snow. And I was under the impression that that's, and BC Housing had come to an agreement. I believe that's only be open until March 31st anyway. And so for 5 weeks, 6 weeks, BC Housing will be looking at, if that's not the case, then I want to reconsider that because I don't want to see people sleeping in the snow. I want to make sure that they've got shelter. I don't want to see the same kind of problems happening downtown that are being created. And I know Whispers is getting the brunt of it because of the certain elements of the people that hang around there are creating a problem for the community. It's taken away the trails from the community. You can't use it in the summertime. People are afraid. It's created problems downtown. It's created problems for residents, and they feel, and what we're hearing is that they feel that you're enabling these people by supporting them. And if there were more restrictions put on, there wouldn't be such hard feelings, I don't think. If things were monitored a bit better, and I think, that's why council in the summertime had to come down with such a heavy hand. It got everybody's attention. But now then going back to the table and considering and giving it 6 months. And we've given you 6 months to get your ducks in a row. But I don't want to see people sleeping in the snow. So I don't want to, I would approve this, I would vote for this, but I think May 1st is more than necessary. I think April 1st, because then Bets can go through their term to March 31st. And that's the primary concern, is having shelter. And I would agree to vote for it to stay open both facilities until April 1st, providing that by the January 29th council meeting, we have evidence that the unregulated wiring has been removed or decommissioned, so that we're not at risk for the rest of the community. That's about as far as I would go on this. And I think that is, that's about as much as I can compromise.
That's you're suggesting a friendly amendment to my
Yes.
resolution. Can I speak to that for a friendly amendment? It's up to me to decide whether or not to accept that. The reason I put May 1st is because the long range forecast here is that April is going to be really nasty. We're expecting higher than normal snowfalls this winter, moving straight in, and April can be pretty brutal. That's why I specifically chose, I wasn't a random date. I did some research looking at the weather forecasts, and April is going to be nasty. Last year they asked for extension for the same reason, and that's why I suggested May 1st.
How late did we extend the last year?
It was extended to, we actually got extra money and we extended it for until May, I think.
Am I allowed to speak?
Answer the question.
Diane,
Okay.
Your worship, I believe it wasn't last year, it was the year before.
Yeah.
That we provided the extra 50 weeks. Last year, I think it was status quo, I believe it was March 31st.
And if I may just quickly interject here, the fact remains still, which was by admission by Mr. Steve McGibbon, that they are still over the limit by his own admission, at which point there's non-conformity again, according to our fire chief. Am I correct? Correct. So do we have another, that would be a third issue now. So we just keep running into more issues.
So, okay, to get back to the capacity issue, I mean, we've seen this cold front that came into the east and it gripped the whole eastern Canada. And it was so severe that Toronto opened up armories and places that weren't designed to house people, just to get them inside. They didn't care whether they had beds, they just needed to get them off the street. So I think the fact that it says that it can house 10, I know, Steve, you can probably sleep 15 if you needed to. I'm sure that you've got a little bit to keep people out of the cold. But this is where, you know, maybe some of the churches could step up and say, we don't want people on the street. We'll take some excess.
BC Housing
Yeah.
has also offered that backup plan. Please do not forget that.
Right.
So
but
there you have options that if we're talking. again-
providing they do come up with that.
And you're recommending April 1st, so which means, let's say, the end of March. Again, may I repeat, February the 8th to the end of March represents how much?
6 weeks. 6 weeks.
So there's no guarantee because we are not weather forecasters, so we don't know what the weather will be like. Or see it.
Your worship, our donor is definitely like to provide some clarification with regard to the
Go ahead, Mr. Bruce.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First, sir, I apologize for not making this morning's meeting. I really wasn't feeling well. With respect to the maximum occupant load of 10, there are, what the building code suggests are alternate solutions, including fire watches and other formats which are available. Should a registered professional provide some documentation stating that an establishment is capable of supporting so many people, providing they instigate these alternate solutions. So if a registered professional is engaged to produce those documents, 10 is just a number. It certainly can be 15 with the appropriate professional involvement.
But again, how do we address the upgrades and the solutions regarding what Councillor Butler had mentioned regarding the leakage, potential danger to the occupants inside the building? Again,
Well, as I did say in my email, we're not prepared to go too deep into the water ingress situation and the problems which may or may not exist. I couldn't tell you. And most certainly regarding electrical compliance, it sounds to me as though that they may be on the right track by having an electrician in there immediately to address those concerns, be it disengaging whatever inappropriate electrical components may be or fixing them. I don't think it'd be too terribly long to do.
but once those solutions are removed, once again, as you are well aware, according to electrical code, once the electricity is touched in any which way, it has to be brought up to present code. That can be confirmed very readily with the electrical safety board, because it's not a matter of going in, pulling out those wires. Once it's touched, everything in that building has to be brought up to present day code. That is a given. And any electrician, even be it Boundary Electric, walks in there and does not do that, I fail to see them getting approval from an inspector.
I'll await the electrician's report on that aspect. I'm not familiar with how far one has to go. I do think though that if some electrical work has been inappropriately installed and thereby uninstalled, well then maybe it's no harm, no foul, but I will await the electrician's report for those comments.
Councillor Thompson and Councillor Tripp.
I don't remember, I was there.
Sorry.
You want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead. You haven't had a chance.
Just a couple of quick things. First of all, through you, Councillor Ross, I was not trying to download this on the churches. On a permanent basis, I'm saying temporarily. If after the 8th of February, there's a requirement, perhaps I know the Christian Center, that's where the Beth started, opened their facility for the shelter. I had suggested that perhaps Whispers of Hope could rent the kitchen from the Gospel Chapel, which is a commercial kitchen, as I'm given to understand, to do their meal prep, and perhaps volunteers could bring the homeless or the elderly and those who require and need a hot meal to that location for that purpose. Conversely, it could be Meals on Wheels to those in need. One of their board members this morning, the Whispers of Hope board members, stood up and spoke to the electrical issue. And now that I hear that there's water pouring down, water and electricity, that's not a good, that's not a good mix. And, you know, well, I would dearly love to be able to support this resolution. I can't.
Councillor Crog?
Yeah, a couple of things. As I said this morning, my concerns are safety concerns and liability concerns. We keep saying the corporation, we're talking about the lady that lives in a condo over there and the guy that lives over there. We're talking about the taxpayers. I applaud the effort of that Mr. McGibbon made in securing an electrician. And I did note Mr. Bruce's response was, I need to wait to see electrical inspection. Well, we're making a decision tonight. So I can't say unless Boundary has already gone through it and said exactly what needs to be done, and this, they will be able to do it. That still leaves me with concerns. The occupancy thing, I think is awesome. With the fact, like, they need fire alarms if they're over 10, but again, Mr. Bruce says you can work around that. And I was actually, came up with another idea, is just, you have somebody step out of the building for half an hour while somebody else steps in. And there's ways to work around that. But the safety aspect is still bothering me, because I'm being asked to make a decision tonight. I don't have confirmation. If there was interest on council's behalf of moving the decision till the 29th, and then we can see exactly what has happened, whether it's up to code. I also requested more insurance to make sure that we're named. You saw what they have to do for the beer gardens and stuff like that. So right now, I'm uncomfortable. If we waited till the 29th and those things were gone, then I would be comfortable, right?
Councillor Butler? Councillor Tripp, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate the councillors who are attempting to, and not to say that the other ones aren't, but what I see is that you're working towards trying to find some sort of a reasonable solution, and I'm grateful for that. I really think that you're engaging with this and you're understanding it all, you know, from all sides. One thing I did want to mention about Councillor Thompson's request that the churches step in now is that it really isn't up to council to be directing what churches can and cannot take on in the community. And the other thing is that the clientele, many of the clientele there do have mental health issues, and the staff that Steve has over there, they are uniquely trained to deal with the people who come and use their facilities. So I think we would have an issue there in terms of taking those into a church unless Steve could get the staffing component to go along with that.
May I just interject on that, Councillor Tripp? That's done all the time, even at the coast. It was on television. There's no request for the councils to recommend that. So the churches have come right to bat in the coast.
But it's not our place.
No, I understand that, but still, then the churches should voluntarily, readily come forward.
Where should, could, would,
I just want to speak to I think there's a misunderstanding. Beth started in a church. I'm not saying that the church themselves should open their doors and the church congregations should be monitoring and doing this. I'm suggesting that Beth's contact and that Beth's with their employees and staff and knowledge and know-how on a temporary basis, rent or use one of those facilities to get us over the hump. And, you know, to say that I am recommending that the churches open the doors, that isn't my intention at all. My intention was to work with that's to approach. And I say the Christian Center because that's where it began. I don't know, maybe the Christian Center's not interested, I don't know, I can't speak to that. But it's just a suggestion of another location that might be looked at on a temporary basis.
No, I haven't. I also was supposed to speak to this, to the amendment.
Councillor Hammett and Councillor Ross, I'm gonna do that last year, but that's it.
Yeah, in response to Councillor Crog's concerns, in the friendly amendment that I was proposing, it would have a contingency that it would be passed with the contingency that by the January 29th council meeting, we had confirmation that the electrical had been, the faulty electrical had been removed. If at that time it hasn't been, then it makes no difference. They still stay with the existing termination date. But it gives them that opportunity in 2 weeks to come back to say, yes, we have made, and we have you know, indemnified on the insurance and our electricity. But I think, you know, I'm more concerned about deaths right now because I think it's up to us to make sure that we don't have people freezing and dying on our streets. I think we need to get them off the street and into someplace warm. It's unfortunate that people are in that situation, but I think it's up to us to make sure that at this time when it's critical. Now, you may say that March 31st might not be long enough because we're in for a very long cold winter. Well, I think once we get to March 31st, then we look at it. And if we have a cold snap where it goes down to -5 or 0 or if it's cold, then maybe on a day-to-day basis we look at it, you know. But I think that we don't need to take it to May the 1st. I think April the 1st. We're past the hump, we're past the worst part of it, and then we can always reassess it at that point.
I would accept your and I included the January 29 that the electrical issues are addressed.
Councillor Butler.
So Beth has an occupancy load of 10 people, so we're talking about housing 10 people here. From what I can count, off the top of my head, we have at least 10 churches in this town. That's one person per church, most of which have good community kitchens. I've been in most of them. And the amount of people that have responded online that are concerned about this issue, surely we can find a place for 10 people.
We have 30.
We have 10 that are staying at Best. By closing Best, it's 10 people displaced.
Plus BC Housing.
I think if we wait until January the 29th to see if any of the churches can step up and take one person each, certainly within their mandate.
That means somebody has to max out the building on.
No, well, yeah, so Best move into one place, and I agree with Councillor Thompson that Best would be able to staff one facility. It's an option. We could hold it off until January 29th. I would be okay with waiting until then to make a decision to see if somebody, you know, everybody in the community is watching this right now. I'm sure that the community can come up with a solution by January 29th if we hold it off the table until then.
We have a solution.
If we're gonna call the question, I want to make my closing remarks. Yeah, I said I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
I did ask to speak for the second
Why?
time. Through you, to Councillor Ross, you you said you'd accept the friendly amendment with the 29th, and a second or two later, when Councillor Butler, minutes later, Councillor Butler mentioned the 29th, you said it wasn't acceptable.
To put this whole decision off to the 29th. I don't want to table this to the 29th.
But that's what the friendly amendment.
No.
Oh,
The friendly amendment means that we approve the notice of motion tonight with the amendment to April 1st with a contingency or caveat that they come back on the 29th showing us that they're in compliance and that they have a sufficient insurance.
okay, to finish my rambling thoughts. I looked at a whole bunch of different ways. I talked to a couple of people about ways that could maybe help the situation, and I see that some of them have been addressed, but not all. I have no guarantee that they can fix the wiring. Another suggestion I made was if push came to shove and the issues are in the Whispers of Hope building, that they shut down so that BAS can operate until they're in compliance. What do you want to, like, I'm trying to figure out something. Everybody wants people to have shelter. We have some concerns. I have huge liability concerns. I've heard all of the same things Councillor Hannah has. For every positive, supportive message I've heard, I've probably heard 2 or 3 that were not. So I'm here for the whole community and to protect the residents. All of them, not one group or another group. And I'm finding it really hard to be able to do that unless some changes happen. That's all I'm saying.
Again, council, bear in mind, February the 8th is 2.5 weeks away, so there's still the opportunity, even though this resolution is not passed. There's still the option. You do not have to extend.
Well, if they don't have a place to go now, they're not gonna be moving in 2.5 weeks. And that's an unfortunate situation.
There's 2.5 weeks still. The remedy you're expecting by the 29th. Well, there's even longer time till February the 8th.
What?
29th of January is a
8th
month.
is when they have to be out.
No, the 8th is when they have to be out. January 29th is prior to the 8th. Last time I remember my calendar,
If it was,
which states you're using that contingency. That contingency is automatically in place because if the 8th stays as a termination of lease date, they still have up until the 8th to possibly remedy something. And then we could still bring it back to the table. I can still bring it back to the table.
why don't we just go with the 29th? With an earlier,
Right.
You
don't
have
understand.
Then it's not a.
6
The 6 months is the resolution.
And they
So,
tried,
what are you
and
planning
they
to do
tried,
February
and they
the 8th?
tried.
February the 8th
yeah,
is.
if they don't have a place now, they're not gonna find a place.
Now, they're not being, there's nobody's on the
I
street
know, but
today.
if they don't have something lined up now to move into in 2.5 weeks, they're not gonna be moving in 2.5 weeks. You couldn't even find an apartment to
point
rent
is-
and move into in that short time frame.
There's been 5 months.
I know there has, but the point is, this is a bad situation. We need to try and make the best of a bad situation. It's, we can't just abandon people that are sleeping outside. I don't think we can in good conscience. I don't think that we can legally even do that. I think it would be.
There's a huge proportion of that group that does not even want to go into that.
Yes,
to stay there.
I know that.
So you're still gonna
I know.
have those potential people that are supposedly, as you put it, freeze to death.
Well,
So,
Those people that don't want to take advantage of the services that are provided, that's entirely up to them. But there are people that do, and I think that if they want to use the services and we restrict them from using it, I think we need to be able to get them over this hump, and like I say, it's trying to make the best of a bad situation. I'm not happy with the fact that there isn't a resolution after 6 months, but we need to do something.
Can you read back the amended resolution right now? Do you have it?
That council extends the time with which bets and whispers of hope remain in their location until, I believe it's April 1st now, 2018. And I believe what you want to say is, with the exception of repairs and reports on the building, need to be available for the meeting of January 29th, 2018.
Yeah, in order for this motion to be approved.
And we wrote insurance?
Or insurance. See, we're dealing with a building that should actually be condemned.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah.
You
And
know?
show proof of the
Exactly.
insurance.
There's so many things that need to.
And it will be, and it's going to be, it's just that right now, we don't have any place to sweep people.
We all have access to the same in-camera information, and there's nothing in there that makes me convinced of putting people out on the streets. There's nothing in there that makes me think, oh yeah, we need to put those people on the streets and shut it right now. We just keep changing the rules, we keep changing the goalposts.
Building needs to be condemned.
It does, and they're gonna be out
Right away.
now, they're gonna be out by April 1st, then condemn the building, bulldozer, do whatever you want.
Are they? Or are they gonna be coming
No,
back to
well-
us with another request?
Well, I'll tell you right now, and you are my witness, this is it. I'm doing the best I can. I'm compromising. There's nothing in camera that convinces me personally that it's worth putting people up the street.
Other than the fact that people within the organization itself have come to us and requested that this place needs to be shut.
And it will be. This is a
No, but
win-win
people
situation.
within the organization itself have come forward.
And I've had people within the organization come forward and say the opposite. This is a win-win situation. For the people who have appealed to us to please get them off the river, we're doing that. And then for the folks that are using the facilities, we're just giving them a bit more time. But that river, that will be vacated. Next summer, there won't be a soup kitchen there and there won't be a shelter there. That won't be operating there. It's a win-win. We're just helping them, giving them a bit more time. They've showed due diligence. They've shown it time and again. And we just put more fiery hoops in front of them to jump through. They didn't even know what they couldn't comply with until 2 days ago. We didn't know either. Shame on us.
That's not true. Fire chiefs did state
It was
to them.
the letter was written January 4th, and we didn't get it until this week.
It was October that the letter was written.
Yeah.
We didn't get it until this week, and they didn't see it, they didn't get it. So they're trying. Steve went right back and he got on and he's like, okay, now we gotta do this. It's changing the goalposts. This is a win-win. This resolution is a win-win. All the people that you're expressing concerns to Councilor Butler, they're gonna be satisfied just April 1st, just give them until April 1st. And we've seen the states from the RCMP, the crime has gone down and it tends to go down in winter. People aren't as mobile. They're not as likely to be out and do shenanigans. You put them out on the streets, you're gonna see shenanigans. I would call the question. It's the best I
To
can
vote on the amendment.
All those in favor of the amendment? Anyone opposed? Amendment falls off.
You're brutal. Shame on you. You call the question on the original resolution.
Call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Oh, it carries.
3-3.
Yes, it does. 1, 2, 3, 4. It carries.
On the original motion?
Yeah.
To give them till May the 1st?
The amended failed. I just went on the original.
The amendment failed, but it was a friendly amendment. I thought it was the actual motion.
Yeah, I thought, okay, let's
So,
just clarify it.
What is
You
it?
want to
Because
have the
I'm confused
amendment
now.
motion?
Yeah,
We're-
the
we're
amendment, the
voting.
amendment failed.
Yeah.
So the original motion to extend it to May the 1st is what we voted on secondly. And you voted in favor.
Of the original motion,
You voted against the amendment.
Paul's original motion.
I voted against the amendment because I said, like, my concern again was see if it's done by the 29th.
And that's in the.
That's the
that's in
No,
the-
but it's not. It's saying you can stay there, you can use that, but even on the 29th, that's if it's not fixed, if the liability,
Then it goes
Is
back to the
not-
April 8th.
Yeah.
Goes back to the February 8th date, the February 8th date. That they're out. They have to stay with the original termination.
Yeah, so the original
Yeah.
motion was called the question on, the second question was called, are you in favor of extending it till May the 1st?
okay, so I was confused.
So do you want to bring it back to the table?
Yeah.
I think we need to have it brought back to the table and maybe vote on that,
Mm-hmm.
because people didn't understand what.
Okay, can you read the amended motion?
The amended
Okay.
failed, we don't need to bring that one
No.
back.
Well, no, because it was
Didn't
confusing
Okay, so
for
the,
me,
all
because I'm
right,
slow.
no worries. So the extended motion is,
This is the amended motion?
the amended motion that council extends the time which Bets and Whispers of Hope remain in their location until April 1st, 2018, with the exception that repairs on the building, reports on the building, and proof of insurance need to be available for the regular meeting of January 29th, 2018. Anything missing?
They need to be in compliance. Not just have them available, they need to, it's,
Okay, the repairs on the building need to be complete, or?
I thought it was just basically the electrical concerns have to be addressed.
It's also the occupant load that might have. The
Yeah,
occupant
and Steve
load-
was promised that they're not gonna go over 10 until they comply with what needs to be done.
That's fair enough.
mm-hmm,
The electrical repairs on the building?
comply, yeah. Good with compliance.
Again?
Yeah, no, in compliance by the 29th of February,
January,
or January, pardon me.
Meeting.
the January 29th meeting, will be back on the agenda. We'll come forward to show us what we can.
Well, then why don't we just defer the
No,
whole thing?
no, no. Because
That's
then
what I
they'll only
wanted to
have a
do.
week. Because if we decide on the 29th, no, we changed our mind, we're not gonna vote to keep it, they've got a week to get out.
Yeah,
But then
and
we
we're
still
gonna
have
have this
Yeah.
argument, we're gonna have this argument all over again on the 29th. Yes, we are. And let's just have it now and let's vote now. And then they'll get all their work done and they can carry on until April 1st. Meanwhile, they're gonna keep looking for a new location.
Does everybody understand the amended motion now?
I do.
Sorry.
We have a question on the amended motion.
Wait, we voted down the amendment, so we have to bring it all back.
To be brought back
You
to
need
the
to vote
table.
on the amendment, and then
Yes,
you need to vote on the
that's
amendment.
what she's asking for.
It was brought back.
We screwed up and now we're gonna filibuster this and we're gonna crucify it on a technicality.
Let's just bring it back.
No, we gotta vote to bring it back.
Oh, okay.
A unanimous vote of council to bring back the resolution. You know, the resolution, we voted on it.
The resolution had failed at the unanimous vote of council, bring it back to the table.
But
Is
the
it failed?
second resolution actually passed because Councillor Hammond didn't vote and Councillor Crosby voted yes. So it passed the second resolution. If we want to go back and watch the tape,
Yeah, it did.
the second resolution is actually passed.
Yeah.
So if we don't bring this back, we're done.
We're done. It stays open to May
It stays
1st
open
and-
until May 1st. And I'm very happy with that.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring it back.
Has to be
Okay.
Adams to bring it back, right?
Can I,
No, the mayor can.
seeing as I caused some of the issue here by my intricate voting skills, so the original, and that's what I had a problem with, the original motion says they don't have to do anything.
Exactly.
They don't have to fix the electrical, they don't have to have insurance, they don't have to have anything.
That's what you voted in favor.
They can stay.
So did you vote under duress?
Yes.
Oh, well.
That's
You can't
key.
call ignorance duress. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You can't.
So, Or you gonna bring it back?
American Day.
Yeah, nobody does.
You can bring it back, or we stick with my original motion, which actually passed.
Nice position you put in, Councilor Cook.
That's what I'm here for, buddy.
That's where we're, some of us are
No, I
recommending.
was backwards.
It was a godly intervention.
I was actually doing this. Oh, a vote happened?
Good mind to leave it as is.
Okay, then.
Everybody can.
Well, then you were the one that was so
That's
concerned about the
Thank you.
liability issues.
I was.
And the building.
Oh, well.
That's what David Lesson learned from council.
Okay, next item, what are you trying to?
Okay, all those in favor, bring them back to the table. Anyone opposed?
You can bring it back.
I just did.
No, you asked for a unanimous vote,
Doesn't
but
matter.
as the mayor. Oh, wait a minute.
Your worship,
I
First,
need a unanimous vote.
you'll need to
I don't need
determine
any
if
vote.
you're bringing back the original motion or if you're bringing back the
I'm
amended
bringing
motion.
the amended motion back, and I don't need
Yeah.
any vote of council for that.
So what would need to happen is that you're gonna ask council to, or one member of council to make the motion to bring back the amended motion.
Right.
You're suggesting to bring it back, and then you get the motion and seconder, bring back, and the specifics is the amended motion that was put on the table. And so then that gets passed, and then the amended motion gets put back on the table for council to
Right.
consider.
There's no need for unanimous. That's what I- on the first one, so no need for unanimous. So,
Let's just do this and we'll.
so, okay, there's voted all in favor to bring it back, so we're back. So,
You need to have a motion.
I move that the amended motion be brought back to the table for reconsideration.
We never had an amended motion because the amendment got voted down. We voted on the original motion. We never voted on an amendment.
Yes, we did.
yes, we did. It got voted
Voted.
down. It got voted
No,
down.
you voted on the amendments. You did
Yeah,
not
the
vote on an
amendment.
amended motion.
Yeah, the amendment.
Yeah.
So theoretically, what Councillor Crog ironically voted,
In favor
The
of
rest
the original motion.
Is,
and there was no original motion because there was an amendment.
You don't under duress. It was
Now I-
confusion.
yeah, it was.
So there was an amendment, so the original motion can't even work.
Yes, it can. You go back to the original motion. If the amendment fails, you go back to the original.
So your worship, I think the best place here, because the, council Butler said the amended motion was voted down. And council.
No, the amendment, not the amended motion, the amendment.
The amendment, yeah. So the original motion was the one that was voted upon. So the proper way is you're gonna have to work backwards now and decide if council wants to bring back the original
Yeah.
motion that was voted
That's
upon.
it.
Yeah. They bring that back, they have to first and second agree to bring back that motion by resolution. Then that original resolution comes back on the table and gets voted upon. And then if council so wishes, then they can go back in reverse and go to the amendment.
Make the friendly amendment again.
Yeah, you can put forward another amendment.
Yeah, you
once
have to
bring
put
it back
another
to the
amendment
table.
because the amendment is dead. So the original motion still holds, but the only thing we can bring back now is not the amendment, because there was always that language, the amended motion. There was no amended motion. It was just an amendment.
Okay.
So now we have to bring back the motion that was voted upon, which had no amendments attached to it because the amendment died.
Okay, let's bring it,
Okay, so let's have a motion.
bring it back.
You don't even have to, Mayor can just bring it
I
back.
know, no one's asking for a motion.
Just like, yeah, more conversation.
We got nothing else
We
to
still
do.
got an in-camera
I
after
know.
this. So, enjoy.
Okay,
Yeah, we're there. So, now,
Okay, so you made a motion, is there a seconder to that motion? To bring
the
it
mayor brought it back.
back? The mayor brought
Okay,
it back.
so yes, the original motion is back, which just says nothing needs to be done. They're out on May 1st.
Okay.
Okay?
So that's what we're voting on.
yeah, so we're gonna
To
call the
bring it
question.
back, we're going to bring it back.
No, the mayor's bringing it back.
Yeah, I brought it.
Oh, you brought it back.
Brought it back on the table, so
Table.
now we're voting on the
The
motion.
original motion to extend it to May the 1st without anything being done.
No, we want to amend it before we vote on it. We're not going to defeat that.
then put something forward.
Well,
Why'd you put back what?
well, I thought we had to defeat this.
No, we don't have to
motion.
defeat this motion, we can amend it, and then approve those amendments, and then vote on the amended
The
motion.
amended one was to extend it to April the 1st.
Yeah, point of order, Mr. Mayor, that amendment got voted down, so if you wish to put forward an amendment,
Yes,
you have to
gotta be
put forward a
I think
different
the
amendment.
terminology-
It was voted down because they were confused.
Yes, but the terminology, there was never an amended motion.
No,
It was
the
an
amendment on
amendment,
the-
period,
of the
end of
motion.
story. So please, council, stop using the terminology amended motion. There was no
Well, you
amendment.
know what we mean, let's bring it up.
The original motion is back on the floor, the amendment failed. So.
Now, we
if you want
either
to
vote
bring-
on the original motion or we make
Or
another
you make
amendment.
a different amendment, you can't make the same amendment that was
They were
voted down.
confused about that too.
But that's the mayor's prerogative if he wants to bring the amendment.
No, I
back.
thought it was back on the table, so I'm allowed to talk to it.
It's just that the
Or
mayor
am I
wanted to vote
confused?
back.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest.
Okay, Councillor Crog, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you need to, change the amendment, then we'll change the, I'll make an amendment exactly the same, except I'll change the date. April the 2nd. Okay, March 31st, if there is a March 31st.
I'm glad you're talking about a serious issue and making a joke out of it. That is amazing.
Yeah.
That's really
Why don't you
professional.
just bring them back?
I'll second that, amendment.
April 2nd.
I've done it.
No, March
March
31st.
March
March
31st.
March 31st.
Okay, so let's call the question on the
Okay,
amendment.
let me hear the amendment, please.
Extend to March 31st, yeah, well, the whole one. That council extends the time in which bets and whiskers of hope remain in their location until March 31st, 2018, with the exception that electrical repairs on the building need to be in compliance by January 29th. Reports on the building proof of insurance need to be available for the regular meeting of January 29th, 2018.
The wording of exception, I don't like. I would recommend contingent on all deficiencies be corrected.
Well, it can't fix all the deficiencies, they have to rip the building down.
Yeah, come on, we're not gonna give them $10,000 for
Code.
6
Problem
extra
is
weeks.
The code.
Electrical.
We're still right.
Yeah, I don't think we should just specify electrical. We gotta be sure that the ventilation system is in order. Anything that will, that
That's
will
all.
impact, endanger the public.
Well, that's why they have the insurance.
Oh, can I ask a question, please?
Councillor Thompson.
Who's on?
You're on now. You got it. Okay, there you go.
Through you to, I guess, our manager of operations, who looks after the buildings, right?
In conjunction.
In conjunction with the building thing. So if a tenant, in this case, the Whispers of Hope and Baths, are going to do those kinds of modifications to a city-owned building, do they not have to come through the city for permission to do that?
Let's get the answer from the staff, please.
Through the mayor, repairs are regulated under the building bylaw, not just for Whispers, but for anyone. If you're doing building code repairs or repairs that are relevant to the building code, then yes, building permits are necessary. But when you're undoing things which shouldn't have been done in the first place, or where you're providing professional opinions to allow for certain situations, these are not permittable aspects in our building bylaw. They're just required as part of our lease arrangement with Whispers. There's a couple of very direct clauses in the lease arrangement. Thou shalt, and the municipality needs to know, and the landlord and the tenant agreement trumps the building bylaw aspects.
No, but I think the question was asked, do they need permission to have someone go in to do work on a building? Does the landlord need to be informed and get permission from the landlord prior to anyone entering the premise?
I believe the lease arrangement says any modifications of substance, then the landlord needs to be informed, and if the landlord does not respond within 30 days, that approval is tacitly given. There's wording for that, but clearly the landlord and tenant, whether it be the city and Whispers or whether it be an apartment dweller, always need to work carefully together when contemplating new works.
Could we say remediation of electrical alterations?
Restoration.
No, because if it has to be, as stated, brought up to code.
Well, how do we get around that for this period of time? At least they remediate
I don't think
the
you want to use that
alterations.
kind of language to get around that for this period of time.
The
Because you're setting
safety
yourself
inspector.
up for a pretty dangerous
Or
situation
restore it
with that
back to
language.
the original.
I think it's just make it safe.
Correct.
For us, this, we're talking about an extra
Up
2 months, come on.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, this is really important. We never talked about it ever until today, but now, oh my goodness, people are gonna die. Come on. This is all
We'll be talking
filibustering.
about it a lot more,
We're
Councillor
not
Ross, if
talking
something
about people
happens,
dying.
we'll be talking about it a lot more.
Yeah, we put them on the street. Okay, come on, let's talk, let's send, we have
Okay.
amendments to the motion that we're gonna consider right now. Can we please do this?
Can I have that?
Yeah, so I just spoke with the fire chief as well regarding the ventilation system there. So contingent on that electrical repairs on the building are in compliance and cooking appliance, exhaust hood, and ventilation systems are clean by January 29. Reports on the building and proof of insurance need to be available for the regular meeting of January 29, 2018.
All in favor of the amendment? Anyone opposed? Okay. Carried. Passed.
Now,
Now we just voted
Call on the amended
okay,
motion.
then.
All those in favor of the amended
Well, we
motion?
have to have a mover.
I'm moving,
Like the one we just voted on?
No, you have to vote on the amended motion.
Yeah.
The one that was just read to us.
That was the amendment.
Yeah.
Now that amendment gets incorporated into the main motion and you
We gotta vote on
We could
that.
I already had, we already had, I believe we already had a mover and a seconder right at the beginning when I read it without the committee of the whole wording
Yeah,
put in there, correct?
Councillor Ross and
Yes.
Councillor Tripp.
Exactly, so we already had the mover and the seconder, we made the amendment, so now we are voting on the amended
Motion.
motion. I don't think it's.
And we have the prerogative of debating an amended motion, but we're not gonna do that because it's gonna. All right, let's call the question.
Okay. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Councilor Butler, you're in favor?
I'll go with the majority of council.
Motion carried.
Like my vote was voted. You voted against the amendment, and then you voted for the motion.
Yeah.
Strategic.
I would have my vote for you.
Myself also.
If there's an issue.
Just
Yeah.
for clarification, all the opposed votes are recorded on the minute items. Always.
And the reason
At the
is,
bottom of the motion.
on my behalf, the reasoning is, should God forbid anything occur, it will be noted. All right.
So we done?
Now we're on to the second lead item, which is lead item B, 12B, which is the DC transit discussion.
Your worship, I believe the deputy corporate officer has been reading that we had a policy to consider in December 11th, so
Yes.
If you had to read it out, basically whether council is going to be offering the consent to the proposal as that was presented by the regional district with regard to the file.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That council consents to the regional district boundary bylaw number 1660 to increase the requisition limit of the Grand Forks and District Transit Service local service. That's how it was given to us.
Seconded, Councilor Thompson. Any discussion? Councilor Butler?
I don't remember everything that was discussed this morning, but was there the option for also increasing fares so that our requisitions didn't go up by quite as much?
That was not confirmed by Mark Anderson, and my concern on this subject is because we have no definitive responses at this point in time yet. We are being asked to approve the increase with no response back from BC Transit by Mr. Anderson's own admission. It's status quo, but where do we go if it doesn't go that way? That's my concern. That's what
Thank you, Mayor Conner. Yeah, I wasn't really happy with the way things were unfolding around us this morning either. I don't think that we got the information that we were hoping to get, but I think that Roland made it very clear that if we don't put this through, then they are not going to be able to provide even the services that they have now. And we know that people in the community are already struggling with the level of service that's currently available. Numbers have gone up, what, you said 10 or 11%. So I kind of feel like we're caught between a rock and a hard place, and we really don't have any alternative but to endorse this, vote for it.
And the reason for my concern is because by their own admission, and I was at the regional table, this has gone on for quite a while, and then all of a sudden now this one individual has left his position, replaced by another one, and again, no response. So I realize the predicament, we just said the same terminology, rock and a hard place, but at the same time, this is a really substantial increase, and we're not sure the outcome because the clarity is not there yet. So these numbers that were quoted to us are not necessarily the ones that are going to be written in stone, because they could go up even higher if the authority comes back, BC Transit. So then it makes it even tougher because to be able to substantiate that kind of increase. I mean, we're going from the operational went from 7,000 to 13,000, which is huge. And the other one was less. It went down from 26 to 23. But having said that, that still comprises a grand total of a $3,000 increase with no real sense of what are we getting for that. Status quo was quoted, yes, we have now. And if we don't comply, then we basically get nothing.
Well, reduction in services.
Yeah, well, or yeah, exactly. So that's not a really warm and fuzzy option. Either give us the money or you get nil or less service. I feel very hard for that one. That's a one tough to swallow for taxpayers. That's right.
Yeah, it's a tough one considering the service that we're provided. But as Rory stated, that the budget hasn't been increased since 1991. And the costs are going up. So we're looking at a $10,000 increase over what we've been paying. There's no guarantee that we're going to get any better service, but there is a guarantee that we will get less service than we have now, which is worse. I don't think that we have any choice in this. I think if they want more than the 10,000 that they're asking for, they have to come back to us for approval. I'd be prepared to vote yes to at least be able to maintain the status quo on the transit that we have, because I don't want to see the services reduced. I'd actually like to see them increase. But that they come back to us if it's hard and transit.
But that's exactly my point, and by Director Russell's own admission, it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse. So this is what the concerning part is that I have, because if this amount does not substantiate what we're looking for the citizens of Grand Forks, and they come back for more, then what? We're still gonna be in that same rock in the hard place. Councillor Thompson.
The thing is if they want to come back for more, we have to go to referendum or the alternative approval process. I don't, again, I support, what you said, we don't have choice. We are going to have to, because there are people in the community that do depend on that service. So.
No, I fully agree with that part of it. I know. It's just the predicament that we're in. I wish there was more options offered to us.
Could we ask the CFO what, I mean, is the amount that's in the budget currently right now, is it at the 26,423, that figure that he gave us?
Of course, CFO.
3 minutes later. As we haven't done the budget yet, what we would have to do would be to include that $13,000 in some. I'm not sure the exact amount.
10,000, it was 10, just.
Well, no, it was 7,000 went to 13, so this year it's 13.
What happened last year was, we were asked quite late, right before the budget was complete, so it was kind of a last minute addition to the budget was to include that, and I think it was 76, 71. Last year, the amount that they have in their bylaw, the $40,000 that they want to increase to $50,000 is actually included in their requisition to the city. So that's the amount that we collect in taxes on behalf of the regional district. It's not actually in the city's, within the city's budget. So last year that was 18,000. It went by increasing that from 40 to 50,000. That 18,000 will go to 23,000. So that comes to us in the way of the requisition, and we collect that from the city taxpayers on their behalf.
Well, last year, excuse me, sorry to interrupt you. Well, wasn't, you said 18,000, but according to the documentation that Mark Anderson gave us, it was 26,000 last year, aside from the 7,000.
He was talking about combined 18,000 and almost 8,000. That's where that's where he came up with the 26,000. So what was 18,000 in the requisition last year will become 23,000. And what was 76, 71 in our own operating budget will become 13,000 and something. So then we would need to include that. I would need to include that 13,000 in this.
Which will bring us to 36,582.
So our amount actually goes up 5,000.
Hey.
Our amount would go 5,000 because we requisitioned the other 5 from for the RDKV on the taxes.
No, 26,423 becomes 36,582.
It was up 10 altogether,
Yeah, 10.
but it's split 2 different ways. Because 5 is coming out of the city coffers, and 5 is being requisitioned from the taxpayers on behalf of the RDKV.
Still 10,000 no matter.
10,000. You can take it from here to fall, but it still comes the same.
I understand.
Still
the
10,000.
requisition, the maximum requisition that they can put forward in their bylaw.
Yes.
Is a maximum of $50,000.
Right.
Okay, so that $50,000 is going to be taxed over the participants, which is Greenwood, area D, the city of Grand Forks, and
But the actual amount out of our budget, which went from 7,000 to 13, is going to increase by 5,000 over last year.
It's only increasing in our budget. I see what you're saying. The rest of it, the taxpayers are paying directly to the RDKV on their taxes. It's still, the residents are still gonna get 10,000 increase, but only 5,000 is going through on our budget.
the rest of it goes on a different.
5,000 will impact our budget over last year.
Is that
True.
And 5 comes on the tax roll, so to speak. But it still comes down, if we're gonna split hairs, it still comes down to the fact it's $10,000.
Yeah.
It's compared to 7,000 last year.
Okay.
Actually, 13,000 is compared to
That's
7 last
It's
year.
$5,000 difference.
6,
I don't know why that's relevant.
Doesn't
but
matter.
anyway, regardless.
We don't have a choice.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got the questions on the table. So
We
all
can't pull out of the agreement, we can't pull out of the bylaw.
No.
Call the question?
Or was it also discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Those opposed? So carried. All right. Move on to establish our late items. We'll move on to questions from the public and the media. And again, everyone, you know the routine, please stay focused on the subject matter of the agenda. Having said that, turn it over to the gallery. Gentleman in the back.
Hi, my name is Kevin Lennox. My wife and I moved here November 1st, and so we've been in Grand Forks now for 2.5 months, and I know by looking at the people in this room that what I'm going to say is pretty unpopular. I'd like to address specifically the petition against moving the new Beth's facility into the neighborhood on 2nd Street and 68th Avenue. In my 2.5 months here, so I'm not talking about Whispers of Hope and Best as it is now, I'm talking about when they moved. In my 2.5 months that I've lived here, I've seen my neighbor getting broken into in the middle of the night. I've seen garbage building up in tent cities on the river. Just yesterday, I had to call the police to get a tent removed from my backyard. You know, there's just way too many incidences. You know, I've read in the papers, I've seen through the city council documents that the needles and what have you are a huge problem in the city. I happen to live on the river. I'm concerned for myself. I'm concerned for my grandkids now. I'm concerned for the kids who use the public facilities, our parks. I'm concerned for the business association, the businesses in Grand Forks. It's a cornucopia of places to break into our homes, our businesses, and defacing our rivers and what have you. And it's my contention that when they finally do move on, that they should not be anywhere near city facilities. They should be out in an area where they can have their people there. They can provide their own tents. They can litter their own properties. You know, they shouldn't be around our residences where they can break in. They shouldn't be around our businesses where they're breaking in. Let them tent out in the outskirts of town. They can find cheaper land. They should, I assume, get cheaper taxes. I know they're going to say that they need access to facilities and people have to be able to access. They should be running maybe a shuttle service, something like that. But I, for one, do not want a new
Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
facility
If
in
I
my
may just
neighborhood.
interject for a second.
Certainly.
My apologies, but you're not directly focused on the subject matter of this agenda
Yeah.
because you.
Yes, I am, sir.
Yeah, the petition.
Yeah, but the
Petition.
petition, but realistically, what's happening now is you're going in a purveyance of what will come if they establish on 2nd. I'm just giving you clarification
Okay.
here. But what you should be addressing, your issues that are occurring now are because where they are established now, not where they will be, because that's just a supposition or
Okay.
an assumption.
Well, right now
that
I'm
it
6
will-
blocks and
Yeah.
I'm seeing all of this, and then if they move where they want to, I'll be 2 blocks from that facility. And I don't believe they should be in anyone's neighborhood or around the city. I think they need to move outside. Thank you.
Councilor Butler.
I just have a question for Beth. I was wondering if they'd be able to address the status of that application for the community at large so that we know where we're at with that proposal of BC Housing.
I'm allowed to speak now?
Oh, yeah.
We're not any further than the day we left here with your support. BC Housing is investigating other routes. You guys probably know more than I do at this point with what BC Housing is doing. So, sir, right now that thing is just going nowhere. I know that'll make you feel a wee bit better.
That was the nature of my comments, sir, by the way. because there's nothing there yet. So you're saying of what could be, but it's not there yet. What's happening to you now is because of the present situation. That's about it.
And I just wanted to clarify a statement that was made this morning. We're all tired. It was said that we had agreed to give them land. We had never agreed to give them that land.
Okay.
Just to be clear.
That was not discussed and decided yet, which avenue we were going down. To our, my apologies. I feel like I'm sleeping, but I don't have a cold.
Is it turned on?
Yep, I got it. So before I get into all of the other things I have questions about, I did think that I would ask a question.
Identification for the record. Sorry.
Sorry, Kate Village, the Grand Forks Gazette.
Oh,
yeah, I'm on hour 9.5 of meetings, something like that. Give or take. I did think I would ask a question through you to Manager Dave Reed, if he's still here, or Ms. Heinrich then. This CCTV sewer camera at $40,000. It is more expensive than the hydro seeder, which is a piece of mechanical equipment. What makes that camera so expensive?
Very intricate job.
Well, it has to be waterproof and wireless, right?
I'm definitely not going to be able to give the technical answer on that, but I imagine it's a very special camera.
I would imagine so.
I see. Somebody else might be able to.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Nobody's at supper.
This is from my previous history as Deputy Operations Manager. The camera is it's an environment where it's going in, it needs to be insulated. It comes on a big wheel of tubing that goes with it that you shove basically down the sewer system, and it can go several hundred meters that way. So it gets used to determine where there's blockages.
An oversized colonoscopy.
Yes. So it's not a simple device. It also records at the same time, so there's computers built into it. The current one deals with DVDs or CDs, actually, I think I should say, which we all know they're dying, right? So it's been about 15 years since I started down there. They've asked if we could please replace it, and this is a good opportunity. So yeah, it's definitely a heavy duty device. It's nothing simple.
I need nano submersible drones.
Hey, that would be perfect.
Thank you. I just want to give everyone else a chance to have more questions.
You have another question?
Oh,
okay, go ahead.
Lots of questions. So to you, Worship, thank you. You mentioned throughout this discussion that this is an operational issue. So the first thing I'm interested in, the operational information that was provided to us today regarding ventilation and electrical and occupancy loads, was that provided to the organizations prior to it becoming public in the agenda? Post January 4th, post that date when that report was made to council or the city, between then and when it became public on Thursday.
But before we go further on that, when I say operational, let's take a couple of steps backwards to somewhere on the timelines of August, when there was a council resolution to terminate the lease within 6 months because of contraventions that occurred then. This is what prompted council to first do a knee-jerk reaction and give an immediate eviction. I believe it was a week or a couple of days, which we realized that was not the proper way to go to handle a situation like this.
I've got a question about that too.
Okay. So then now, as it's come forward to the close proximity of the date in question, which is February 8th, here we are. But since then, more issues have come forward. And these issues were not basically a reason to strengthen our position to terminate the lease. These were just additional information that's come forward, which then became more of a risk factor than more so than it was back in August.
Okay.
But to answer the question as far as were they informed, that I would have to get from staff.
Would it not be standard practice that after an inspection is done, such as it was on January 4th,
right,
that information be provided to the tenant in writing?
Yeah, I could answer that.
Okay, well,
Because I asked that very question this morning.
Mhm.
And the answer I received was that the fire chief verbally advised the Whispers of Hope of the issue. And that was followed up by letter.
No.
I believe it was. The building inspector, there was no letter stamp?
The information was conveyed to Whispers except for the electrical
excuse me,
part.
Council, can we just have
Okay.
Mr. Roos give us an answer on that?
Thanks,
Let's
Mr.
get it
Mayor.
from the source, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor and through the Mayor, and I really don't want to speak for our fire chief.
Yeah.
Harriet, but him and I are most certainly on the same page now. It's a very good question, Kate. I'm glad you've brought this up, and I've been meaning to clarify it. And again, I apologize for not being here this morning to do so. When I accompanied Chief Harriet to Whispers back in October, I did so as a courtesy for Chief Harriet. He was there he was there solely to review the kitchen and cooking facilities, of which I've had quite a bit of experience with as well in my previous life. While we were there, we took the opportunity to review internally a few other areas within the facility that neither him or myself had had the opportunity to review in the past. In August of this year, when this issue first came to light, with respect to Whispers and with respect to some leasing issues that the municipality had, they were purely external to the facility. They were not internal. So it wasn't until October when Chief Harriet and myself reviewed internally some of the issues that it came to my attention that there appeared to be some electrical issues that needed to be resolved. When the mayor talks operationally about how Chief Harriet and myself go about getting compliance with the various codes and bylaws that we have to deal with, we have to be reasonable in many respects, and we also took into consideration the fact that there was a deadline. There was a February 8th deadline in which even if Chief Harriet started writing orders at that time, there was no way that those orders could have achieved compliance by February 8th. So operationally, we knew that there was very little we could do regarding kitchen equipment compliance or even perceived electrical compliance, which I'm not an electrical inspector, so I think that there's some electrical issues. Our concern was if the deadlines were going to be extended beyond February 8th, that those components be addressed prior to February 8th. That is why we wrote those emails. And operationally, that's how we roll. That's all I can say. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Does that explain?
Yes, that does. Thank you. I have another question.
Go ahead.
Just giving others a chance to jump in here and would like to start on. Through you, your worship, thank you again. Perhaps I'm asking in vain here, but several of the councilors mentioned in-camera information as the reason they'd be voting against this motion. Will that ever be made available? Will any parts of that? I mean, this is a significant decision-making process, and some councilors feel bound that they can't tell the public, their constituents in an election year, why they're voting the way they are.
At this particular point in time, yes, your question is in vain because it will not be responded upon.
Yeah.
It was actually discussed briefly today,
okay.
And at this point, there's no resolve yet. So you'll be the first to know should we decide to release any of that information.
Okay, thank you. And then perhaps as a follow-up then, the councilors also mentioned how many letters they have received from residents who don't feel comfortable speaking in a public setting in opposition to this, which is understandable, that's fine. But how many letters are we talking about here? If they're not going to be made public, I mean, we see publicly that 300 people have supported Whispers Staying Open in the form of a petition. So if you could put a number on it, how many letters are we talking against this?
That'd be a tough one, but I know if you counted all the phone calls that I received, and especially the latest ones that came in, quite a few during Christmas, I can't put an exact number on it, a couple of days, stating that please don't back down on this one, because you know, we're taxpayers, we have rights too, and that kind of scenario. So
your best guess, a few dozen, several dozen, 100?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Really?
absolutely.
We probably had more letters.
Personally,
We've had more letters asking us to stick to our original decision than we have asking us to back down.
Okay.
The only difference is the people that are in support of keeping Whispers open signed a petition. The people that did not want Whispers to remain open didn't sign a petition because I guess they didn't feel they needed to because the council had already made a decision.
That's fine, but that's why I'm asking for comparison's sake. We've got 300 people on the petition. That's why I'm asking for council's best guess of how many letters they've received.
Well, I don't know to say that.
So this
Comparing letters to
is
letters,
this is why you also had a member of the gallery this morning stating that council had already made a decision before we even talked about it. So there we go.
But
This
most
is the
of
type of
letters
gallery
were
we
about
had.
not reneging on the eviction. Yes. That's what they were. Don't renege on the eviction. And we haven't reneged on the eviction.
Okay, point taken, thank you. My next question, Your Worship, thank you. Again, there's a distinction been drawn between social and operational issues here, but my recollection when this came forward in August is that we were responding to resident complaints about drug use and homelessness and the property looking unsightly. Do you see a difference between that? I mean, that's a social issue.
Absolutely. I can answer that before you even complete your sentence. Because as Mr. Bruce stated earlier, most of the issues were occurring outside of the establishment. And until this came to my knowledge of these potential risks to the actual patrons of Whispers, it put a whole different spin, because my response immediately is once I found out that this place should be shut down immediately because of the risk to the corporation, and more so, and I repeat this very emphatically, which I said today, to the individual that are in that establishment, namely the patrons themselves, because you know what? A building can be replaced. It is material. A human life cannot be replaced. And it would be way too late if a tragedy like that does occur, not only based on the liability factor, but the fact that we had the opportunity to potentially save that life and we did nothing. We extended it and let it continue with that potential risk being in place. That is where I draw the line.
Yes, so you, by your own admission then, the issues that were operational at the time were off of Whispers property. So it was a social issue that prompted the eviction. Is that correct?
To a degree, to a large degree, and a lot of contraventions that occur, namely containers, disturbance around the neighborhood, which is part of our bylaws, and issues like that. But nothing at that point, to my recollection, deemed any threat or danger to human life. Not to those patrons of Whispers. And I know this is going to be a hard lump for everybody to swallow when I make this statement, but that is the fact. Human lives are being put at risk here. And I'm really hoping that Whispers and Best will follow through, not because they have a deadline of January 29th, but hopefully they follow through ASAP on this, because if something does occur, then I will, as I voted against this, hold them fully responsible. And I hope they can carry a burden like that, which something should happen at that establishment in regards to human life.
Mayor Conrad, -5 degrees below is a far far more detrimental to human
No, a
life.
fire is, when someone
Oh.
burns in it.
But you're implying that the directors are incompetent and
I'm
irresponsible.
not implying any such thing. I'm implying the fact that the building is in disarray and that building needs to be demolished.
Sorry, with all due respect, Your Worship, that didn't answer my question. My question is, when it was conceived to be a social issue in the first place, by your own admission, why today were councillors asked to consider only the operational evidence in front of them, rather than consider it a holistic social issue?
Well, councillors weren't asked, they went there only with social in any event, so I think that element carries itself. But I still believe the social aspect is there, because I have no disregard for the homeless, not at all. And I truly believe that there should be a place like this. But when these elements come in, being in the industry, no, I have to draw the line, and unfortunately I have to say that the social conscience has to take a good look at it, because of the fact when operational deems a threat to human life, then I don't think anybody can contradict a statement like that, because that is first and foremost. And those violations, to my view, deem threat, life threat, more so than cold outside.
But those were not the operational concerns brought forward when the eviction was brought forward.
Eviction, what eviction?
Termination of.
Termination
Yeah,
of lease,
that's the
which is
terminology
an
everybody's
eviction.
using, eviction. There's no eviction, it was a
It is
termination
an
of
eviction.
lease.
Termination of lease is an eviction.
If you want to play it that way, no.
I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna belabor the point. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Lady in the second row.
I don't know if I can ask multiple questions.
Okay, as long as they pertain to the
I'm
agenda.
Tammy Battersby. I'm Vice Chair of the Board of Whispers of Hope. My first question, Mayor Conrad, is and was Whispers of Hope as an organization, and Bets as an organization, being held accountable for the behavior of people off of their property?
That was an interesting point, not from my mouth. I never said that statement whatsoever once today regarding that you're responsible for the behavior of the people around.
Sorry, a few minutes ago, you said that in answer to a question. Can I ask a question based on how you answered a question? Because you did say something a few minutes ago about how things that were going on around.
Yeah, containers and basically the public complaining about disturbances.
Yes. So is or was Whispers being held accountable for disturbances that happen off the leased property? That's the question.
To a degree, yes, if Whispers was enabling these individuals, then yes, because the enablement is what kept these people in the community. So Whispers was enabling these individuals that caused the disturbances and or potential break-ins, etc., then yes.
Okay. Secondly, I do want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you not only for putting the motion forward, but thank you for wrestling with it. I know that each of you wrestled with it and put a lot of thought into it. And though some of you were opposed, I respect that you put a lot of thought and effort into coming to your conclusions. The other question that I had is, can you confirm, Mayor Conrad, that though you were invited by Whispers Board and though you were invited by Whispers individual members to come to Whispers of Hope, that you have not come to Whispers of Hope and have not toured Tent City? Can you confirm that?
I was never invited.
Yes, sir, you were, by a letter that I put in days after our first eviction notice.
I was never invited, and I will stand fast on that statement.
That letter, sir, has been made public. It was emailed to you here, and it was made public at that time.
I've been down there, not officially, I've been in there,
Mhm.
and I've been down and around on that trail. I would go down almost on a weekly basis and walk down that trail.
Just to respond in another, I know you're not going to accept this as coming at this at a different direction. I have also been asked by citizens who are opposed to Whispers staying open to say, have you come down there and looked at the tents and everything else and the condition of Sukamoto Park? And again, I replied, that is not my position to do that. We have bylaws officers. If there's a problem, they will report back to the city. It's not because of lack of interest, but I will not go one side or another. I represent all of the constituents in this community, and it's not because of lack of interest or because, yeah, you're right, this is horrible, or yeah, you're wrong, this is great. You understand what I'm trying to explain? Maybe I'm not explaining it properly.
I don't fully understand how one can make a decision, an educated decision on something they haven't seen. I know that you were given pictures of the mess in the tent city that was on city property, on the city trail behind Whispers. And some of the other pictures people gave of the area and tent city. And so I can appreciate how you came to some of the conclusions you came to from the pictures that you've seen. But I can't appreciate why a mayor wouldn't visit nonprofits in his community to see what's going on, or visit a city-owned building to see how it is in fact being used by its tenants. So, and this is my first opportunity to really ask those questions. I did send letters, several actually, but initially I sent a letter immediately after the cease and desist order, and that did include an invite. So.
Just wondering if this is productive in any way.
And also on that concept, to one degree, for me to go unilaterally and look at, make any even informed decisions to myself has no relevance, because it's always a voice of council. Always whole council as a body that makes any decision regarding. I didn't make any decision regarding Whispers, not even to myself, because that's not in my parameters to do that. Because furthermore, as you can see, even this evening, it's a voice of council. We operate as a body, as a whole. We may agree to disagree at times, but in the same context, we come out at the end with a decision. So, yes, ma'am.
Louise Heck, Chair for Whispers of Hope. I just want to say that over the summer with the tents there and everything, I don't think anybody was more distressed than many of us there at Whispers. Partially because, yes, it made our rivers unsightly, and that's, you know, that's a beautiful spot down there. And yeah, we were really sad at the condition of it all, but also we were just really sad that in our community, our wonderful, rich British Columbia community, that people have to live this way. And it's not just a Grand Forks thing. I mean, we've been hearing about that just all across the country. We've been bombarded with it. So it's not new and it's not unique, and it's not necessarily the fault of this city council or the city councils before or whatever, but it's a much bigger thing of, you know, the provincial and federal governments for just years and years and years not addressing some very serious social issues, and this is what we're left with, and we feel very passionately about doing our
Absolutely, I
best.
agree with you 100%, because I've stated that all along. We're not unique in this situation.
No, we're not.
This is not only province-wide, this is countrywide. Countrywide.
All across
You feel
North
for one
America.
moment that I'm not aware of that, absolutely.
Yeah.
But when it comes to issues regarding what's just transpired in the last 1 or 2 months, that leads me in a different direction, because then my element is still, whether it's believed or not by all of you in the public, is the human aspect. Because too many things, as we see every day of our lives, can occur in a heartbeat. And when we are aware of a situation that could present a potential risk to life, someone has to act. And if you feel that that is wrong, then so be it, but I don't.
Hi, my name is Darren Sutton, and I'm speaking as a citizen, also a former resident of Medicine Hat, Alberta, where we worked together as a community to end homelessness. So one of the things that I would like, just to support the other statements that have been made so far, is about the popularity of the decision of council and about how letters of non-support have come in. We have a responsibility in our community to inform people about the truth of what causes homelessness and what the results of societal issues are, and to do our due diligence to inform people so that they can make best decisions. So sometimes our decisions aren't very popular at all, but they're what's right based on the very informed position about the causes and root causes of homelessness. So any decision that is made not informed by those facts is irresponsible. So I would just like to thank you for having the conversations, as well as implore you to actually share factual information, not personal opinion and perceptions of what you believe to be potentially true, but to actually seek out the information from people who do this work on an ongoing basis. So you mentioned Gabor Mate, for instance, fantastic resource. Samson Barris, an amazing resource. Ian DeJong, an amazing resource. All of these resources have been presented to council to be better informed about the causes of homelessness, because what we're looking at right now is the results of system breakdown. And punishing people who are already vulnerable is actually the worst possible action to take. And we know this because we watched other provinces try it that way first. So I implore you to please look at the research that's coming out of Ontario, Alberta, and Quebec about the errors in judgment that were made when they didn't know better, and all the things they're doing now that work so much better. So thank you so much for having the conversations.
Yes, thank you, Kate, again for the gazette. Just for your worship, the recording officer, I just want to make sure I have this vote record down correctly, because there were 4 votes. So that is Ross, Tripp, Butler, and Hammond in favor of the amended motion. Thompson, Conrad, and Krog against the amended motion.
No. Krog voted for the amended motion.
Krog voted, okay, so it was Thompson and Conrad in opposition.
And Councillor Butler. I voted against the amendment.
No, I voted in favor of the amended motion.
Yeah.
I'm asking for the amended motion, not the amendment.
There was 2 opposed.
I am asking for the final, this is it.
Right.
We didn't bring it back?
This is it. We have Ross, Tripp, Butler, and Hammond.
And Krog.
And Krog. Okay. That leaves Thompson and Conrad against. Rob, that's the recollection of council on the recording?
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Oh, that's not a recollection, that's a fact.
That's true.
That is what happened here today.
Me too. Thank you.
It was confusing, but we finally got it right.
We got it.
Some of us weren't confused.
So, do we have any other questions from the gallery? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Ross. All those in favor? I'm gonna hold on. Meeting is adjourned.
Excuse me. You're not unpopular, you're residents. And you deserve to have some safety. That's part of what we're hoping to accomplish. Help out people.
Right. I recognize that not all homeless people are problem. Unfortunately, if you're too many are, unfortunately, they can become.
We have 6 people in face. We have 6 hours that need to be. And we need a new crisis.
Oh, I
read that. Yeah. Now, we don't serve all of those people.
Sure.
We may, and have you been up to date? But we can't criminally record your people. We can't run a criminal record search.
No.
I think you had that conversation. Yeah. And I hope you heard from that, if there was there's a federal human rights act in Canada that doesn't.
You cannot refuse services.